Okay, there's one last thing I want to talk to you about this morning. Well, it's still this morning. I got 7 minutes left before it's this afternoon. By the time this is posted, it's this afternoon, and I look like a fool. Um, they will announce Seattle next month. The NHL will announce that the Seattle Totems are going to be the 32nd team. So a team that will wear a jersey similar to this will end up being your 32nd NHL team. And I'm okay with that because it's within 4 hours driving distance from here, which makes it kind of fun. But what it does is it causes fans in other cities to say, well, wait, what about us? Well, if you're not in the loop, you're either Canadian or there isn't a confluence of events that will allow you to become a member of the league. Let's start with Houston, though, because Houston, this really is the interesting one to me. And I always get requests. Can you talk about Houston? I've talked about Houston. I talked about him a lot last summer. I'll just talk about him here. Houston has an owner, same owner as the Rockets. He has a building. Toyota Center has a capacity of 17,800, and it opened in 2003. The NHL looks for a few things. It looks for a newer building. Seems to be important because those ones normally have the big skyboxes. That's where all the revenue's made. And they like the idea of southern U.S. big markets. Houston's a huge market, and it would make total sense for the NHL to go into Houston. And a newer arena than a lot of others, with the one in Houston that they've got, Toyota Center, I think leaves them open as probably the most likely to get a relocated team. I don't think the NHL expands beyond 32. They might, and I know we can all agree on diluted talent and whatnot, but they might. And there is a video on this channel of, hey, if it's a 40-team NHL, what might happen? And it's a fun thing to look at, but for today, I'm just looking at, okay, with Seattle being in, who else still has a shot at getting into the NHL as a team? The Kansas City... in general, Kansas City's an iffy one because Kansas City had a team in for 2 years in the 70s and it didn't work out. And I think after what happened with Atlanta, I think that it makes the NHL a little more gun-shy about going back somewhere that it's failed. Which is weird because they put Atlanta back in Winnipeg, but it didn't fail in Winnipeg. The Canadian dollar failed Winnipeg. So it was never a lack of fan interest. It wasn't bad ownership or anything. It's just Canadian dollar tanked and Winnipeg just couldn't keep up. So Kansas City doesn't have that problem, but they also don't have an owner. They have a building, the Spirit Center, 17,544 capacity, and that opened in 2007. And when that new building opened, there was immediately talks about, so when does the NHL go back to Kansas City? As a market, Kansas City is smaller than other markets they're expanding to now, whether it's Vegas or Seattle. So that may hurt them. Quebec City is the other of the three that I think are absolutely, yep, this is where the NHL is likely to look. But there's no current owner. Now, they deferred the expansion bid that came in at the same time as Vegas put in their bid, which means the NHL didn't really have to give a no. And the owners that were making the bid didn't really want to pay $500 million either with the Canadian dollar falling apart. So it really underscores just how tough it is to bring another team to Canada, that the Canadian dollar makes that much of a difference. And right now, last time I checked, the American dollar is at $1.28 to $1.29 Canadian, depending on the time you check it. And that's a huge disadvantage that Canadian teams are working at. The Videotron Center, you'll notice Canadian spelling as center, C-E-N-T-R-E instead of C-E-N-T-E-R. I don't get involved. I write it on the board the way that it's written on the building. If Americans want to be upset with the way we spell center, if Canadians want to be upset with the way that the Americans spell it, that's between you guys in the comment section. I'm staying out of it. The capacity of the Videotron Center, 18,259. That's plenty. That's way more than what they have in Winnipeg, and Winnipeg is providing a ton of money to the NHL. This arena opened in 2015. What does that mean? That means skyboxes, big revenues, all kinds of fun stuff, but they're close to Montreal, which didn't affect them at all in the 90s when they last had an NHL team. Not for the negative anyways, it was a positive. There's usually a lot of Montreal fans in the crowd for Montreal-Quebec games. But it is a small market. It is a very small market. And while we all would enjoy seeing the Quebec City team back, we'd enjoy seeing the Nordiques back, whatever you want to call them, odds are they get the Nordique name back if they came back. As much as we'd enjoy that, I don't know that the NHL wants to go there. With a building that big and that new, if the NHL wanted to be there, they'd be there. So let's look at other cities and just the possibility. Cleveland has Quicken Loans Arena. It seats 20,056 for hockey. These are all hockey attendances. I pulled them all off of Wikipedia. They're all the hockey attendances. Quicken Loans Arena opened in 1994, but since it's the home of their basketball team, odds are it'd be perfectly fine for hockey. But again, the NHL went to Cleveland before. Would they go back? Would they go back to Cleveland? And I don't know the answer to that question. I really don't. Portland, the Moda Center, 18,280 is the capacity there. It opened in 1995, and it is the home of the Portland Winterhawks currently. That's plenty for capacity. The NHL's proven that's plenty for capacity this year, and I think Portland would support it. I think it would be fun to have Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver all in the NHL at the same time. But we'll see, and that arena size definitely works to their advantage. I also think Portland's a big enough market that it works to their advantage. Oklahoma City has the Chesapeake Energy Arena, which seats 18,036 for hockey. And it was opened in 2002, so you've got a new arena. You've got decent attendance. Oklahoma City's proven that they'll support basketball. Now, I question Oklahoma City as a potential NHL area only based on the fact that I haven't seen how much they would be willing to support an NHL team, and none of these cities have an owner ready to step up and give an expansion fee of, well, for Seattle it's going to be $650 million is the rumor. Milwaukee, BMO Harris Bradley Center, 17,845 capacity. It was built in 1988. I think the age of the arena would hurt them. I really do. 2003, 2007, 2015, most likely. And Seattle has to completely redo Key Arena on the inside. They got to completely gut it and remake it in order to get an expansion team with the NHL. I can't see an arena. I mean, the capacity's fine, but I can't see an arena from 1988 working. The NHL doesn't have old arenas. Other than Madison Square Garden, the oldest arena you've got is the Saddle Dome, and the NHL is fighting tooth and nail to get rid of the Saddle Dome. So that could be a problem for Milwaukee. Orlando, Amway Center. Yeah, Orlando's on here. 17,363 for hockey, and it opened in 2010. If Orlando ever said, you know what, we think we need 3 teams in Florida, A, most hockey fans would lose their minds over it, and B, I don't know that the NHL would be willing to do it. I think Florida's had enough problems with attendance that I think they would have some difficulty in justifying adding a team in Orlando. And that's it for me with American cities, because I'm at 7. So and I'm straining to come up with reasons why they'd go to a couple of those. So we come to Canada. Okay, of course, Canadians say, well, why don't they put teams here? So I'll answer that. Hamilton, First Ontario Centre has an attendance of 17,383, opened in 1985. And again, an older arena like that in a Canadian market, where you'd likely have to pay Toronto money on top of any, if you have expansion fee, that's going to be almost $1 billion Canadian. And, I mean, it's a lot of money for anybody. And I don't care who you are, it's a lot of money. And I don't know that the NHL wants to go to Hamilton. They've blocked Hamilton teams before. I don't know that they'd want to go back to Hamilton, or want to go to Hamilton. I guess it's back to Hamilton because there was the Hamilton Tigers, right? Halifax. And I hear people say, well, why not Halifax? Okay. Scotiabank Centre seats 10,595 for hockey, and it was built in 1978. In order for Halifax to even get into the conversation, first you need a billionaire who's willing to spend about $1 billion Canadian to bring a team, or $500 million to move one. You have to have more than half of the NHL owners saying this is a good idea. You have to have Gary Bettman agreeing with them. You have to have a brand new state-of-the-art arena, which is going to cost you tons of money, that's got to seat at least, I would think, 16,000 people. And then there's just the market's not that big. Which brings me to Saskatoon. You've got SaskTel Center. 15,195 is the attendance, and 1988 is when the building was built. So Saskatoon, as much as we would love to see a team in Saskatchewan, there just isn't the population. They're just and the idea of fans driving up from Regina would be great, other than when it's the middle of winter and the roads are white out and it's minus 50. I don't think there's going to be very many people on those highways. So that's really the tricky part if you're a fan in these areas is it's not big enough. I've watched in Vancouver over the last couple of years, the team's not as good as they were, and they have trouble filling the arena. So, and that's with a huge population base in Vancouver. And so that's where they're at. This is, I guess, an annual video for me now. But again, Houston to me is the obvious one where I think they'll end up going because they have the owner, they have the building, and they seem to have the desire to be there. I think that's where a team will move. I think we'll wait and see what happens. Not this summer, but eventually at some point in some soon to come summer, somebody's going to move to likely Houston. Quebec City is on the fringe. Definitely on the fringe. The Canadian dollar doesn't help. And the Canadian dollar doesn't help any of these three either. So you're fighting against the population. If you're Hamilton, you might be fighting against Toronto and having to pay them for having your team. And it's a lot to fight. Thank you guys so much for watching. Hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through, just happened upon this video. And I'll talk to you again soon.